Good morning, good afternoon, HubSpot Nation, LinkedIn friends. Welcome to another episode of Let's Build HubSpot. Onboarding with Willem. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a while, so very excited. How about yourself?
I'm also excited. Um, the reason we can do this show kind of whenever in an unplanned way is because there's always something that HubSpot gives us to talk about. Um,
And then
and
some, huh?
yeah, Yeah, and it's like as a as we were starting up, I was like, maybe I should ask what are we even onboarding to like at this point? Because everything seems to be changing, and you brought up the Dash acquisition, which proved me wrong because I thought HubSpot was in a place where instead of trying to acquire more people, they're just making it more accessible and not have everything inside of HubSpot, like we saw, one of the updates related to Zapier, being able to use that at starter level, I think is a huge signal as to how we're not just trying to force everybody to buy more and be in HubSpot, because that's one of the primary reasons, people don't you don't have to upgrade Pro if you're willing to do a bunch of work in Zapier to get some of the automation that you'd get when you go to Pro. So seems to be an understanding of like how do we actually exist in an ecosystem without building everything onto HubSpot. So I was bold enough to say like maybe we don't see any more acquisitions, and then I just forgot about all the AI
Yep.
space itself, right? So
For
tell us
me,
about Dash. Like what gets you excited about that? And obviously, we'll talk about it in the context of Frame AI, and that what that's bringing to the table, but also cash flow, right? And really completing the data model and the full platform that actually gives all these neat AI tools and platforms the context it needs to do the work for us.
yeah, but you're bringing up a bunch of, well, in a way, integrated but also separate topics. You're talking about the data model that's underneath, and I'm gonna basically call that the whole data set that the CRM is running on. But then again, I already use a word CRM. What actually is the CRM? Is that the database, or is that the graphical user interface on top of that? And as soon as you start talking about, and I'm going to go to the acquisition of Dashworks in a bit, but as soon as you start talking about UI extensions, bringing in something that is not in the underlying data set, but is somewhere else, and you're going to retrieve that and get that into the user interface. Is that still HubSpot, or is it somewhere in between? Are we blurring the lines?
Right.
How about if you create, for instance, and I'm going to come up with the simplest example right now. You have a WordPress website and you have a HubSpot form on there. Is that WordPress or is that HubSpot? Maybe again, blurring the lines. And
Yeah. I
there
think
are,
that's why,
yeah,
even though it's an impossibly hard conversation to explain to people, the diagram that is customer platform that includes everything you just mentioned and the community and like all everything possible is the true platform, right?
yes,
And that's where like
including community, like you say.
if you can get your mind there, like it becomes much simpler to understand why all these things connect and why it doesn't make sense to kind of try and separate, like getting away from the old industrial age mindset of one single source of truth and one tool that's got to be specific for this, when in reality we have to build a whole platform. And it's helped me open up to like that from a business perspective. When I think about building platform, its operational platform includes the processes that your people got to follow, like everything that needs to go in, like the oper- operationalization of the business itself, of the strategy, right? Which is much more than just the tools. you know, people, process, technology, but now AI, now data. And I was thinking about this earlier, like trying to simplify it and why, if we can like zoom out to zoom back in, it's like it doesn't matter how great the functionality, of the tool is. So like we talk about this hub layer, this engagement layer, right? It doesn't matter how personalized I can get or how easy that is if there's no data to support that part. Likewise, in terms of frame AI, right? It doesn't matter how great we can get at unstructured data and finding it if there's no way to action on what it's telling us, right? So
Correct.
this constant push pull, and it's really interesting because what I did after frame AI, after the hug this week, because I'm talking to the Commerce Hub team too, and I said it's so interesting to be in this place right now where you watch what's happening with the commerce side of things, right? Where it's revenue management and we're really closing the loop. Like we've kind of been kidding ourselves that we've had a unified view of the customer without all the revenue that happens in all the other places, right? And now we're going to have that. So it was interesting. I was like, imagine team, like to the Commerce Hub guys, and I was so happy with their response. I was like, imagine a world with, because of Frame AI, like somebody sends an email in and they're like, yeah, can you please charge the card on file? And I want to renew my subscription and I want 10 more. And that they just send in that email
Yep.
and then it happens and the business gets paid. Like, right? And the reason I love the response, they're like, no promises and no roadmap here. Just like, yep, that's the vision. That's how we want it to work, right? When people literally say, we just need it to work, right? It's things like that, which obviously there's a bunch happening underneath the scenes, but that's how you start to relate these acquisitions together and how truly powerful it's going to be. So exciting times. It's been a little unclear to me how Dash, but it sounds like you're going towards like the UX, this layer of how you even understand the insights, but then action the insights.
What Dashworks as a platform does is it tries to create really a unified data set. So it says, well, we have the information in HubSpot, plus everything in your Gmail account, plus everything in your Google Drive, for instance.
Okay.
And you know what? We're going to spin that around. You ask a question, we're going to tell you where the data actually comes from and basically give you an answer based on that.
Wow.
And what we have with Frame AI is something that understands, for instance, a document oracle, or I'm going to keep it simple, unstructured data. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter which company brought which technology.
Right.
As long as we can call it breeze, it's going to be a breeze. And that's as simple, and pun intended, but that's as simple as it should be. And that really is what we're trying to achieve the way I see it. And of course, I also just am referring to the public available documentation. But yeah, if you look at what Dashworks really tries to achieve, it is that unified data set, the same as a Glean, for instance, or something like that has, that it combines the data sources.
Yeah, man. Wow, that's powerful to think about. I'd even go so far to like it's unified context. Like if we're getting the data from all the systems, then this is where clearly the only context it's going to miss at that point is like the verbal conversations that aren't in any system. Um, Man, that's really powerful to think
But
about.
for how long? Because everything nowadays is recorded.
Right.
So did you, and I'm going to ask a silly question, I know, but do you know that HubSpot just launched the note taker? Do you know why that is? That's exactly it.
Yeah. Yep. Um, no, we're on track for this verbal moment where we switch gears. And I've said it a few times this week, and it's enjoy, like, even though I'm not, I think gets us to where we want to go in terms of removing just all of the problems that have existed in SaaS for like 25 years, right? Related to user adoption and stats like salespeople only spend 30% of their time selling. Like, we've got to target that. We have not been able to target it effectively based on the tools and understanding that we've had. But when we can get to the point where a salesperson is verbally interacting with the systems and the humans that he's having relationships with, like, you can get, I believe we'll be able to see like 100% of their time is spent either selling or developing business relationships, right? Because literally even the admin activities, somehow support, like, they just get pulled and assumed out of the conversations, right, that are being
Yep,
had. Um, and we're not, that's by the end of the year, folks, like, in my opinion. Um, I think even things like Dash, uh,
that's
that's
working.
where I'm
Yeah.
sure there's probably gaps that we can't see right now, but
Oh,
we're
there
also
definitely
not,
are.
we're not like, almost every timeline expectation is getting crushed right now by how fast AI is going, and that the domino effect that that has on how teams like a HubSpot can implement faster, can iterate faster, can find those gaps faster and address them faster. Like, it's going to be interesting to see. This should be a good barometer of how to see, like, what's going to happen with SaaS, how fast they can actually get Dash, like, out the door in terms of being a part of HubSpot.
It will be a while. Keep in mind, everything has to be rebuilt from scratch. And I'm not saying that things can't go fast, but
That's
I
the
think
easy
that
part now, though, right?
that
The
this is,
rebuild, the build
yeah.
part.
But for me, it really is about this is so important. If we don't nail this, and again, I don't have inside information from that side, but if we don't nail this, and if we create a crappy product, what would the implementation or implication be? It would be massive. We must nail this.
I'll put you on the spot then. Are there any examples of HubSpot acquisitions? Because I can't think of any off the top of my head. Um, that they dropped the ball on, that didn't go well. Even if they took longer than expected, I don't think that's compared to what we know about every other company that is basically the SaaS model of land and expand and just buy and just plug things in, right? I don't have any reason to believe that this will not go well like the rest of the acquisitions. That they're not going to craft this into the portal in a way that it just makes sense. Just makes sense for usability, and that for me is easy to expect because I know that's always the North Star. It's customer
Absolutely.
experience, right?
Yeah. But the question is, can we do it fast enough? Because right now, everybody talks about being basically the first one rolling out the new features. And that, for me, in a sense, is slightly worrying as well. Because if you're a small company and you have two choices, somebody who created something that is really fantastic, but they don't have any understanding of GDPR or any privacy or anything like that. What is that actually? And security, afterthought. Or you have a company that invests heavily in that and that says, no, that comes first. Maybe the first one will win. Not
Yeah.
for the bigger corp licenses, but maybe for the smaller ones, they're like, yeah, well, we'll see. And that right now is one of the really interesting places that we are. You can get so many AI products out there, but how do they handle data? And that is why it takes a little bit longer with HubSpot to nail everything, basically.
Right. Um, and it's almost like if somebody else has tried to do it and it hasn't gone well, then it takes a little bit extra time. Just because HubSpot takes a moment, like we don't want to recreate that experience, right?
Nope.
And um,
But it's
yeah,
also like we have to juggle with so many balls. I mean, every company is like, where do we put our focus on? If we're gonna launch, and I'm gonna give the simplest example, a new UI, a new menu structure, as you likely have seen. Does that mean that the academy team will be busy for the next like 2 years or something like that?
uh,
That will be like a massive pain.
well, there.
When
Oh,
can
yeah,
when can AI take that over?
yeah. Well, let's go there for a second because I think it's definitely unrealistic to believe that that team can keep up with the pace
Yeah.
of change and evolution, at least in the structured way. This is where I think like certifications in general have to change in terms of like it not like a structured course that just is designed for consumption of information, and then testing. It's just not, I don't believe there's a place for it in this age that we're going in when AI is on everybody's phones and everybody already has, PhD level knowledge available to them unless you design these free flowing practical environments to either you have to get super strict about how it's handled. And that's where the closer we get to controlling everything, the more disappointed we're going to be uh,
Yep.
versus creating an open space for people to just show like their expertise by interacting with the community, by getting things done for people, by how they talk about, HubSpot. It's been a hugely valuable thing with all the Let's Build shows as we've started building profoundly, right? And it becomes a different conversation when you're around people and you understand how they think about HubSpot and uh, you don't have to, it changes the way that we vet and that we ultimately get to the trust. We need to get to the trust where it's like, yep, you say you can do this. You say you know about this. I've seen lots of reasons to believe you. So now, right, maybe the badge is a nice, cherry on top, but not always required. And I, so let's go there a little bit, especially as it relates to onboarding, because I do think we can use all these contextual tools, the unstructured information. I think Tango is a good example of how a strict plan to say, like, people are going to use our tool to do a thing. And we know that's going to build into AI being able to support that thing at a very hands off level. I'd be curious, and it's a good question for the academy team. Are they thinking about any of this stuff like this? Because where I want to go with onboarding, say we are 6 months down the road, and the primary interaction with the sales team is verbal, and people just signed up for HubSpot. What does onboarding look like?
Yeah. And for me, one of the things that annoys the heck out of me, basically, is that if you're gonna tell me how something works, let's for instance say the prospecting agent. So you're gonna look online because let's for now say you don't have a clue. You're gonna look online, you're gonna find a video that's a month old. Nope, doesn't work like that anymore. So for me, everything has at one point to be built basically in the dumbest way in the app. So if you want to do something, Why do we need a manual anyway? That is where we're going,
Yeah.
I feel, because realistically, that menu, why is that there? And yes, that is a serious question. Why
Right.
do you need a menu?
Right.
And
Yep.
yeah, I do get that you can't tell the computer what to do in all cases. Because telling if somebody's sitting next to you, yeah, sure, you need to type. But if you just have the breeze intelligence, then tell it what to do, what you want. And even if you want to go to the prospecting agent with like 3 menu changes in the last 2 months, I just type it in. I can't find anything anymore because my menu looks different than yours. I can guarantee you that.
Right. Yeah. No, it's I mean, that's where like detaching from what we know is going to be important for most people. Nico's been saying for a while, like keyboard's about to go away, like for most people, right? And especially a sales team, where the moment that's where like the admin has to shift from helping users understand that this is possible. Because the moment you tell sales, I mean, if anybody this year comes across and you tell a salesperson that all they have to do is speak to the CRM and they're going to see everything they need and like meetings are going to get scheduled and they tell you they don't want that, please let me know. Like get it on paper. It's just not going to happen, right?
I think
And
that we're already there that 80% of the keystrokes are no longer required because back when I was a CSM, for instance, I didn't make call notes. They were AI generated. And that was last year. And last year is like so 1980 for the AI perspective.
yeah,
But yeah,
because we're getting to the new homepage, which is in private beta, right? They don't have the breeze up front and center yet, but there's guided actions. There's where you left off. And that's where if we can see it on the screen at some point, that means AI can also see it. They probably put it there. And if they can, it's going to be all about the onboarding for me. Like, and that's where maybe Dash even makes it. There's just this like hand-free mechanism where just like put in your domain as the company and that you're onboarded now. Like, and now your salespeople can just uh, ask any question because it automatically plugs us into like the systems that are needed. And in theory, like, because that's where even the data modeling that we're doing, like, tell us about your business,
yeah.
and we're gonna auto generate stuff, right? Um, and then if everything becomes verbal, that will also be used to set up the system and learn so that they can support people. And then, yeah, the AI just needs like, well, okay, what do you do? Like, if you plug me into systems that show us who your customers are, what their behavior is, and then your business behavior and all the processes, right? Like, what else will we need to do during onboarding?
There are pros and cons there, and I also see potential pitfalls. Because let's just for now say that I'm trying to set up a HubSpot portal exactly that way, and I manufacture computer monitors, but I'm not the brightest. So I tell HubSpot that uh, I want to sell computer monitors. Maybe I even go that far. Then it will figure out an image of a computer monitor where I think like, ooh, cool. And it will create some specs for me, which don't meet the specs of the whatever I'm producing. And it may just create something that maybe want to see because I like to see those specs, but I don't know what I'm talking about. How sure are we that everything is factual if we don't already have something? So I think that it's still up to humans to create a data sheet and that sort of thing. And that it's up to a human to say, oh, you created a website. Look, there on that website. That looks a little bit funny. I don't know how it should look, but do something. And that part still requires a human. And I don't see that changing really quickly.
Right. Well, that's why I think like it's the connecting the dots of business. And let's say in the most, laggard of spaces, um, uh, small shop manufacturing, right? There's always an email inbox and there's always a drive. It might
Yep.
not be in the cloud. It probably isn't in the cloud. But that's what I mean when I say the onboarding becomes, can we connect to the email? Can we connect to the drive? If
Yep.
yes, onboarding's done. And now we get right into learning mode to where with that as our controlled base, right? And that's where you have leadership getting signing off on that stuff, and leadership that you definitely want different roles teaching the system on whether or not, stuff is accurate. But again, it's not any different from how a salesperson has been downloading stuff that you don't want them to have local, and now they're using version 10 and they should be using version 15 and it's got bad pricing on it. Like all of these things are still but it's just gonna be verbal, uh, teaching and learning of the system. And then so it'll be interesting to see how we engage different stakeholders, right? But even there, the technology that we have where Alexa can already tell who's talking to her,
Yep.
right? Uh, you won't even need to, like, just the whole world is about to change. And I think that's where the Dash, as you described Dash, right? That sounds like that will make that significantly easier, like connecting to all these contextual places. But I think that's the interesting race that HubSpot has, and all of SaaS against the LLMs, um, and more expansive, generalized tools like that. Because the moment that Claude itself was able to access my Gmail and my Google Drive, email went from my least favorite channel to maybe my most favorite channel, because now I can give Claude context with all the SaaS tools that I use just by having notifications hit my email inbox, right? Because it was starting, as I shared on a couple episodes, like this executive assistant where it's like, hey, tell me like, good morning. And then just goes
Yep.
through my emails, right?
Saw that.
I hadn't connected to HubSpot, yet it told me that I had new contacts in HubSpot. And it took a couple seconds, but then I was like, oh, yeah, there's a notification email that I got about 4 contacts being created, and this is who they are. So literally that layer, that communication layer, now that Cloud can access it. So this push and pull, and that's where I think like a company like HubSpot and what we're seeing is like, hey, can we just drop the rope? Like there's no tug of war here. Like nobody's gonna win that battle, right? So can we just drop it? And like the part that we can't control is user consumption of things. And the more, all you can do is create the space for people to come and enjoy the thing. But it doesn't matter how hard you try. Like if you try to target them, like all the old ways we've been taught are just like, it's getting harder and harder to prove, I think overall, that those ways can be effective in any predictable way at this point,
Yeah, but at
right?
one point, 99% of your emails are going to be read by AI, and 99% of the emails that you're sending are going to be sent by AI, and you don't have a clue what you're sending. And that's partially also the scary thing. Like, you're going to need an AI because otherwise, all those emails, it's going to consume all your time.
Right. So maybe we can help anybody scared by what we're talking about right now. What does people who have been in the position of, say, customer success, onboarding, that position of, okay, we just bought the thing. what happens next? It's like, okay, we're done. Everything's plugged in 5 minutes. Like now what? Uh,
That will
like,
still take a while.
right. But there's a shift where it's instead of managing the system, you got to manage the people like
Yeah.
more than ever. Like, so I would say something like guiding people how to have those conversations. If we're telling them, oh yeah, just start talking to HubSpot and to learn, blah, blah, blah. Right. It's different. It's a verbal prompting instead of, you know, the things that we have been talking about. But what would your advice be? And are you even touching on any of this on the sales side of things right now?
I think that we should realize that things will still take more time than most people realize. Because, at least from my perspective, and I know that somebody like Nico will not agree with me on that, but if I'm going to ask you, like, okay, what really changed in most sales organizations between today and a year ago? Realistically, there's an adoption problem. It's not necessarily that the technology isn't there, but there are still relatively few companies that fully adopt anything that is rolled out. If you keep that in mind, then you realize that in half a year, people will start adopting what we rolled out today. Just imagine how much further the technology has come by then. But that is not what people will kind of adopt. If you strategize from a company perspective, you will think about years. Right now, that's just not possible. That's not feasible, but you will still try. So I'm going to say that right now, everything every company should do is try to look at the strategy, try to look at, okay, what is really important, keeping in mind that you should basically one day be able to say, oh, I have a piece of paper here. This is my strategy. And you will have a camera that will look at it and it will understand. And it will
Uh,
create your custom objects. But you should still do the hard thinking yourself because I don't think that the context windows of LLMs are big enough to keep the weather in mind.
right. Yeah, that's the part that when we hear doubling like down to like 4 months right now, and just all these things related to benchmarks and how much that matters. Like at some point, it switches to like efficiency
Yeah,
and like lower costs at all points, but also usability of these systems. But since they all interact now, it's not like they all get developed. It's very hard to develop in a silo like right now. And that's where if you choose to do that, you're definitely not gonna be able to be on the other side of this. But I think like if we can, since we don't know like how it's gonna go, right? And we can strategize, we should try to strategize separate from the tool set, right? And what will be available.
exactly.
Um, so I think that becomes like the onboarding like moment and adoption moment is that's one side of it. But what would you say is the underlying reason for most lack of adoption situations? Like the
I
number
think that
one
it's
thing.
also, for the biggest part, lack of vision. Let's for now say that I sell three products. I'm gonna try to sell you one product. I make 300 euro dollar profit. It will cost me 400 to sell it to you. Should I set up a mechanism to sell that to you? I'm gonna say, oh, absolutely, because very soon AI will bring that 400 to 100. And if I don't have the mindset like set that up anyway, don't care that I lose 100, then I'm not going to win in the long term. And right now we are at a point where we should rethink everything with cost in mind and maybe do some things that seem foolish, like selling you something where I don't make a profit.
Yeah.
Because if I do that, there's urgency in the company to adopt. It will get adopted, and I will break even very soon, within months, and I will make a profit 1 or 2 months
Man,
later.
I appreciate your rational outlook here, but like that's where when adoption has struggled for 25 years, like, and even in the most successful places, like it's not that I'm picking on sales, but it's the clearest distinction of we have very successful salespeople that have never picked up a CRM in their life. And we should learn from that instead of like look at them, uh, with disdain and longing for like, why aren't you in the CRM? We're doing everything. Like there's reasons. It
Yeah,
almost always relates to like they know how to build relationships and get things done, but also uh, you haven't crossed a trust threshold. Like at some point, like that's where those same people, and what I'm getting at is that the timelines start to should turn into trust milestones instead of any other mechanism. Because
agreed. Yeah,
even if we say that it's so easy, to just talk to your CRM now, if they don't trust what's going to happen when they talk to the CRM, they either won't talk to it or they'll talk to it in a very manipulative way that won't help anybody learn, right? So there's all these. So in this world of like, yes, a lot of the setup became easier. What can we think about? And I think we've got to move towards, um, like, obviously, we need that strategic foundation, but then how we solve for it with mechanisms like CRMs we can talk to. Like, if we don't trust and the team doesn't trust, and that's why leadership alignment is important. So it can kind of drive that through the organization. Um, we're not going to get the outcomes that we want. Not much is going to change, right?
yeah.
So
But what are people looking for with trust? And I think that that is something that that's a question every company should try to answer for themselves.
yeah, they have to. I mean, that's what I've learned. Is that's how I used to be. Always lean into what Marcus Sheridan says about, everybody thinks everybody thinks they're different, right?
Yep.
And at the end of the day, the businesses in the way that they serve customers and the customer journey, you could definitely distill it down to not being that much different. Like customers want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be understood, and they want their expectations met. And if you do that every day, sometimes not even better than the next guy, just doing it every day consistently, you can build a successful business. How you get to that, the consistency, I've learned every business is different because of the people and the dynamics of the environment.
Should
And
still
you know,
showcase that message that you can be consistent, and that's again the marketing bit.
right. Um, so we've got a journey on our hands as always. But hopefully, no, that's it. It's a journey. Like, be
Yep.
aware. Like, try not to put your head in the sand on this one. Like, try to give yourself permission not to keep up, but also be aware that it's moving forward, right? And that if you're not in a position to get on the train or get on the boat before it leaves port,
You're left
it's not.
behind.
Yeah, it's not going to be like digital transformation. We've been saying things like that for a long time. A lot of people have been able to get away with not transforming their businesses. It's amazing. $50 million companies using spreadsheets to do accounting. Like, it still happens, folks. Paper checks everywhere, like Jack always talks about. But this is not that moment. Like, there's going to be a moment. I'm not sure exactly when it is. That's why just awareness at all costs is the only thing you can really control. And awareness of what's happening around you and awareness of your business strategy. That's where you as a leader, whether it's at the top or at the department level, like that's your job. Like, understand that context and put your people in a position to be successful so that they can make their customers successful. That's not that hard, right? Right, Willem?
Uh, it's still up for debate, but yeah, I think that
Oh, so I'm sure we'll have something fun to talk about next week too. We've had so many
absolutely.
updates to the system. I don't think we've talked since Spring Spotlight. Uh, but yeah, and now we've got the inbound schedule all coming out. Um, that's another interesting topic. I don't know how anybody in the world can create a topic about AI and know that it's going to be relevant when we get to inbound, right? So maybe that'll be cool to go through that schedule as it continues to come out. And all of this, all we can do is try to help put it in the context of, how you get the most out of HubSpot. At the end of the day, if we can help you onboard to this customer platform that we just described, right? If we can help move people to that vision, um, then there's a lot of value to be had.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we help you find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great weekend, everybody.